In this video, we're focusing on categorical variables, specifically for displaying them in tables and graphs and describing the distribution of categorical variables. So starting off displaying categorical variables, we have the frequency table, which you're quite familiar with. It looks like this, and what it has frequency. We have it in numbers, and we also have it in percentage. And on the other side, we have the category that we're dealing with. Just as a reminder, to find the percentage of each category in a frequency table, all you need to do is take that frequency, divide it by the total, and times 100 to it. There's a couple of things you need to be careful of when we do frequency tables, especially when we analyze the data that we have in a frequency table. From here, we're going to only use the percentage of each category rather than the actual number of the frequency. So we're focusing on the percentage, not the number. And the next thing we need to be careful of, which seems obvious, is that the percentage, we want to make sure that they add up to 100. But sometimes, depending on rounding, you'll have it a little bit below, a little bit over. But in that case, you should also write 100 to show that they all add up to 100. So here's an example. This is just the gender of 11 children, male and female, and this is the data, and we're asked to construct it in a frequency table. So up here is the frequency, over here is the category that we're dealing with. In this case, it's sex or gender. And for the frequency part, we have the number and we have the percentage. And when you count the numbers, make sure you have some sort of system so you're not making a mistake. So what I've done here is a little underline for each one that I've counted. So making sure that I didn't miss anything. And again, to find the percentage, here's an example. Well, it's out of 11 students. And we're looking at female, there's 6 students. So all you need to do is 6 out of 11 and times 100. Put that into your cas. It'll spit out a percentage that we're looking for you. And the next thing we're looking at is the bar chart. So the bar chart, we can put it together after we have a frequency table, usually. Turn it into a bar chart. We can have it vertically or we can have it horizontally. So vertically, we can have the frequency over here and the categories that we have down here. Or we can have the categories on the side and have the frequency this way. So either it can come in both ways. And one really important thing about bar charts is that they need to have gaps in between the bars. So like the gaps in between, otherwise it will be a histogram. So that's the most important thing. All the other stuff here are just as important, but I think they're a bit more obvious at this stage. So have a read of them as well. So here's an example. We're turning this frequency table into a bar chart, and I've chosen to do it this way, where the categories are down here and the frequencies up here vertically. Again, your first step when it comes to constructing bar charts or even histograms is that getting your scales right over here. So it only goes up to 16 because the highest number I'll need to represent is 14 and the lowest number I represent is 3. So I've decided to go up by 2 every step rather than like 5 or 10 or 1, because 1 would be too many to go all the way up to 14. And then after that, it's simply just drawing the bars, making sure there's gaps in between, making sure the width of the bar are equal, and also labeling each axis as well. And the next one we're looking at is something that might be new to many of you, is the segmented bar charts. So these are bar charts in segments. So in one bar, we have different segments. So we can display multiple things all in one bar. So when it comes to segmented bar charts, again, it is really important to have gaps between the bars. But new thing that you need to be careful of here is they must be a legend or a key. So one of these showing that what each segment in your bar represents. So here is an example. So this is a climate type of 23 countries classified as cold, mild, or hot. And here is the frequency table for it. So we're asked to put it into a segmented bar chart. So as you can see, I've decided to distinguish my bar, different segments in my bar, into using these three types, three styles into the bar and displayed it that way. So only thing you need to be careful of again is making sure like these parts represent the actual numbers correctly, and make sure you have a key as well. And the next we're looking at the mode. So you may remember mode is what is most common in the data that we're dealing with. We can also refer this as a model category. That also just means like what is the most common category. And lastly, we're looking at writing reports using categorical variables. So we'll be looking at writing small reports, so nothing fancy, and it'll always follow the same structure, which I'm about to go through now. So there's two main things that you should address in your report. First is your distribution. So is there a dominant category? So is there a model category? So is anything that stands out of your data, or the data might be evenly distributed. So there's no particular mode in your data, but it's more even distribution across your data. And the next thing you need to address in your report is the percentage of individual category that you have. And if you have a lot of categories, rather than just listing them all, you would choose a few and list them from low to high. So those are the two things you should write in your report. But for the rest of the report, so these are the main things you need to address in your report. But the whole structure of the report sort of follows this. So you'll start off with a brief summary of how the data is collected, and how many people, the number of people were involved in the data. And again, mentioning your model category or the distribution of the data, and making sure you include numbers and percentages in your report. But when it comes to like frequency and percentage, we always prefer percentages. So rather than just listing numbers, you list percentages. So here's a quick example of a report you may write. So starting off with what type of data it is and how many people or countries are involved and what sort of categories were used for this data. And using percentages, we identify the mode, the majority of the data, where it landed. And because this data only has 3 categories, we list the rest in order as well. And that's basically a small report that you're required to write at some point in the future.